The sanctuary of Pine Hollow Baptist hummed with the rhythm of Sunday reverence, stained glass windows scattering blue and gold light across bowed heads, the soft rustle of hymnals, the creak of old pews under weighty silence. Pastor Eli Cartwright stood at the pulpit, a tall figure with a commanding voice that usually rolled steady as Scripture itself. Today, though, his cadence wavered. The Lord is my shepherd," he began, eyes sweeping across familiar faces. Farmers, shopkeepers, schoolteachers, every soul in Pine Hollow seemed gathered beneath the vaulted ceiling. But then his gaze caught hers. At the back, half hidden in shadow, a young woman sat alone, her lips curled into a smirk, not reverent, not kind. It was the smile of someone holding a secret. Eli's throat tightened. His hand gripped the wooden edge of the pulpit until his knuckles whitened. A murmur rippled through the congregation. "You all right, Pastor?" called Deacon Martin from the front pew. Yes," Eli said quickly, forcing a smile. His voice tried to regain its warmth, but the rhythm faltered. He stumbled through verses he'd spoken for decades, his eyes betraying him, drawn back to the figure at the rear. She didn't sing the hymns. She didn't bow her head during prayer. She only watched him, unblinking. When the benediction finally ended, the woman slipped through the aisle with deliberate grace. As she passed, she let a folded slip of paper fall against his open Bible. He froze, heart hammering, as parishioners gathered to shake his hand. Later, when the church had emptied, and silence returned, Eli opened the note. In sharp, deliberate handwriting, "We both know what you did." That same evening, 30 miles south of the church's glowing steeple, the Pine Hollow Creek whispered against its muddy banks. Two fishermen, lanterns swaying on the edges of their small aluminum boat, dragged lines through still water. One cursed under his breath when the hook snagged something heavy. "Snagged a log," he muttered, yanking. But as the weight surfaced, both men recoiled. A pale arm, stiff and swollen, broke the waterline before the body rolled, face half-eaten by time and insects, hair tangled with weeds. The stench rose immediately, sour and unmistakable. "Jesus Christ," the younger one choked, scrambling back. The older fumbled for his phone, hands shaking as he dialed 911. By the time Sheriff Dana Holloway arrived, the area was sealed with yellow tape and floodlights hummed along the creek. Dana, tall and lean with lines of exhaustion carved into her face, stepped carefully through the wet grass. She nodded at her deputy, then crouched beside the coroner. The sheet lifted just enough. Female. Mid-20s, maybe younger. Clothes. Waterlogged, skin mottled. Around her neck, however, clung a tarnished silver pendant, an emblem of Pine Hollow Baptist Church. Dana's brow furrowed. "Get me a photograph of that necklace, and rush prints if possible." The coroner nodded grimly. "Decomposition's advanced, could have been in here for weeks." The air smelled of rot and silt, mingling with gasoline fumes from the idling squad cars. Dana straightened, scanning the darkness beyond the floodlights, the shadows of trees, the stillness of water. The scene pressed on her chest with a familiar, unwelcome weight. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A deputy handed it over. A message from dispatch. "Sheriff, church member ID'd the necklace. Belonged to Lila Ruiz." By Monday evening, Pine Hollow Baptist buzzed louder than any Sunday sermon. The sanctuary pews were filled again, not with worshipers singing hymns, but with townsfolk whispering like cicadas at dusk. Sheriff Dana Holloway slipped into the back, plain clothes this time, letting the voices wash over her. "Poor Lila," a woman sighed near the aisle. "Sweet girl, always sang so pretty in choir." "Pretty enough to catch the pastor's eye," another replied, lowering her voice but not enough to stop the rumor from spreading. "She went missing months ago, didn't she? And now?" Dana moved quietly among them, notebook tucked inside her jacket. The Bible study leader tried to press on with a reading from Psalms, but the murmurs drowned his voice. Every mention of Eli Cartwright carried heat. Some defended him as a holy man under attack. Others hinted he was too close to young women who sought his guidance. One younger congregant whispered to her friend, "He used to meet her after choir practice. I saw them once near his car." Dana's eyes flicked up. Later, as chairs scraped across wooden floors and folks filtered out, Dana lingered in the shadows of the vestibule. An elderly woman, cane tapping against the tiles, paused. Beside her, her voice rasped like dry leaves. "You're the sheriff," she said softly. Dana nodded. The woman leaned closer, her eyes pale and sharp. "The pastor's sins always come back. You'll see." Her cane struck the floor, echoing through the church as she walked away, leaving Dana rooted in silence. The sheriff's phone buzzed again. Another message. She opened it and froze. Photographs from the coroner, the necklace, up close, and the faint letters engraved on the back, L.R. Memory bled into the present like candle wax, dripping slow and heavy. Months earlier, Lila Ruiz had lingered after choir rehearsal, her voice still trembling with the last note of a hymn. Pastor Eli Cartwright had offered her a ride home. She'd declined, eyes darting toward the parking lot where her stepfather's rusted truck waited. "You don't have to go back there," Eli had said, his tone careful, almost paternal. "If you ever need someone to talk to, my door is open." That invitation became late-night conversations in his office, the smell of coffee mingling with hymnals and furniture polish. Soon, it became secret rendezvous at the Pine Hollow Motel, its neon cross flickering like a bad joke. There, behind drawn curtains, Eli's sermons of purity dissolved. Sweat slicked their bodies, but guilt pooled heavier than desire. He spoke of saving her, of offering her a way out from under Frank Ruiz's fists. She believed him. Back in the present, Sheriff Dana flipped through evidence bags on her desk. Inside one, pulled from the pocket of Lila's ruined purse, were motel receipts. 5 slips of paper, each signed under an alias, but the handwriting neat and familiar. Eli's. Her jaw tightened. She shoved back her chair and stood. The hum of the fluorescent lights seemed louder now, as if mocking her. The affair wasn't rumor. It was fact. And fact tied Eli Cartwright to Lila's last known movements. The door to her office creaked open. Deputy Alvarez leaned in, eyes wary. "Sheriff? The press is circling. Folks are saying you're looking at the pastor." Dana closed the evidence bag and straightened, voice clipped. "I'm not looking at anyone, yet, but I will." On her desk, the receipts stared back at her. All signed just days before Lila vanished. By midweek, Pine Hollow was split clean down the center. Outside the sheriff's office, a cluster of church members stood waving handmade signs. "Hands off our pastor," and "Satan attacks through lies." Across the street, a smaller group muttered that Eli Cartwright had always been too smooth, too perfect, and maybe too interested in girls barely grown. The heat pressed down on both sides, sweat dripping, tempers short. Inside, Dana Holloway watched through the blinds, jaw tight. She'd been sheriff long enough to know nothing burned hotter than religion mixed with scandal. Her phone vibrated, a message from her daughter, Claire. "Mom, can you pick me up? Please." Minutes later, Dana pulled into the high school lot. Claire sat alone on the curb, backpack clutched tight. Her cheeks were blotchy, her eyes wet. "What happened?" Dana asked, crouching low. Claire's voice cracked. "They said you're trying to put God in jail. One girl dumped my books in the trash. Another spit on me." She shook her head. "I didn't even say anything, Mom." Dana swallowed the urge to curse aloud. Instead, she hugged her daughter close, the smell of teenage sweat and tears clinging. "This isn't your fault. It's mine to carry." Back at the church, whispers had become open hostility. Dana's deputies reported congregants blocking questions, refusing cooperation. Some swore Eli was incapable of sin. Others claimed they'd always suspected. Late that night, Dana sat at her kitchen table, case files spread across the wood. Claire slept in her room upstairs, safe for now. But the walls of Pine Hollow felt like they were closing in. The phone rang again. This time, it was unexpected. Pastor Eli himself wanted to meet, alone, at the church, after dark. The sanctuary was dark when Dana pushed open the heavy oak doors. Only a few lamps near the altar burned, casting long shadows across the stained glass. The air smelled faintly of wax and old wood. Pastor Eli Cartwright stood at the pulpit, not in his pressed Sunday suit but in a plain shirt, sleeves rolled. He looked older in the dim light, shoulders sagging under a weight invisible to the congregation that adored him. "Sheriff," he said softly, his voice stripped of its usual cadence. "Thank you for coming." Dana's boots clicked against the aisle as she approached. "You wanted to talk. Do it now." Eli's hands trembled as he gripped the pulpit. "Yes, I had a relationship with Lila Ruiz. I won't deny it anymore. But I did not kill her." His voice cracked. "I cared for her. She was lost, and I thought I could protect her." Dana's eyes stayed steady. "Protect her? By sneaking her into motels under fake names?" His face flushed, shame flickering across it. "I was weak. I won't defend that. But I didn't take her life. Lila came to me because she was terrified. Of her stepfather. Frank Ruiz beat her, threatened her. She begged me to help her get out." The words hung heavy in the silence. Outside, the cicadas screamed in the night. Dana studied him. His confession matched some of the whispers, yet something in his tone was slippery. Half truth, half survival. She turned to leave, but something caught her eye. On the pew nearest the pulpit, carved roughly into the wood, was a fresh message. "Stay out of it or join her." Dana froze, her pulse hammering. Someone had been here before her. Someone watching. The next morning, Sheriff Dana Holloway stood in the county records office, flipping through Frank Ruiz's file. Assault charges, public intoxication, domestic disturbance calls. Each sheet painted the picture of a man with a short fuse and heavy fists. Deputy Alvarez leaned against the doorway. "You know he stormed into the church a few weeks before Lila disappeared? Witness says he was shouting at the pastor, accused him of stealing his girl." Dana closed the file. "Figures." That afternoon she drove out to the Ruiz property. The trailer sat crooked on cinder blocks, paint peeling, yard littered with empty beer cans. Frank opened the door shirtless, eyes bloodshot, stubble thick. He smelled like sweat and sour liquor. "You people again?" he grunted. "What now?" Dana kept her tone even. "Frank, I need to ask where you were the night Lila disappeared." He laughed harshly. "You think I did something to her? She ran off. Ungrateful brat. Always thought she was better than this family." His eyes hardened. "Maybe your holy preacher knows more than he's saying." "Witnesses saw your truck near Pine Hollow Creek that night," Dana pressed. Frank's smirk faltered just slightly. He scratched at his jaw, avoiding her eyes. "Truck breaks down all the damn time. Maybe I was out there, maybe I wasn't. Doesn't mean a thing." Dana let the silence stretch. The cicadas screamed in the trees behind them, the weight of accusation settling. When she finally turned back toward her cruiser, her phone buzzed. It wasn't dispatch, it was her ex-husband, calling after months of silence. She let it ring, jaw tightening. As she slid into the driver's seat, another alert flashed across her screen. Surveillance footage located. Frank Ruiz's truck, parked near the creek, time-stamped the night Lila vanished. The sheriff's office. Lab hummed with the low buzz of refrigeration units and fluorescent lights. Forensic tech Marla set a garment bag on the stainless steel table and unzipped it carefully. Inside lay a dark suit jacket. Pastor Eli Cartwright's Sunday best. Dana crossed her arms, watching as Marla bent close. "We ran luminol," Marla explained. She switched off the overheads and sprayed. Under the black light, faint constellations bloomed across the sleeve and cuff, tiny splatters invisible to the naked eye. "Blood," Marla said. Dana's throat tightened. "Human?" "Already tested." Marla's voice was flat. "We matched it. Leila Ruiz." The silence pressed hard, the hum of the machine suddenly deafening. Later, in the interrogation room, Eli sat stiff in a metal chair, his lawyer beside him. The air smelled faintly of bleach and stale coffee. "I told you," Eli said, eyes fixed on Dana. "I didn't kill her. That blood, it's from an accident on a farm. A parishioner cut his hand on barbed wire. I helped wrap it. That's the truth." Dana leaned forward, palms flat on the table. "Then explain why the only blood that shows up on that jacket belongs to Lila." Eli's jaw flexed. His lawyer cut in sharply. "Pastor Cartwright has nothing more to say. Unless you're charging him, this conversation is over." Dana stared at Eli, searching for even a flicker of something: fear, remorse, guilt. All she found was desperation wrapped in silence. As the door shut behind them, Deputy Alvarez slipped her a folder. "Sheriff," he said low. "New testimony. Just came in. Someone claims they saw the pastor and Lila outside the church the night she disappeared." Maria Sanchez sat nervously in the sheriff's office conference room, twisting a cross necklace between her fingers until the chain dug into her skin. The overhead light washed her face pale, highlighting swollen eyes that had cried too long. Dana set a cup of water in front of her. "Maria, I need you to tell me what you saw. Take your time." Maria's voice trembled. "That night, the night Lila went missing, I stayed late after choir practice. I was packing up hymnals when I heard voices outside." She swallowed hard. "It was Pastor Eli and Lila. They were arguing. She was crying, saying she was done sneaking around, that she wanted to tell the truth." Dana leaned in. "And the pastor?" Maria's eyes filled again. "He begged her to wait. Said the town would never forgive him. He grabbed her arm, hard. She pulled away, but he wouldn't let go at first." Maria's voice broke. "I'd never seen him like that." The conference room felt heavy with the words, every syllable a nail driven into Eli's reputation. Dana scribbled notes, though. Her gaze stayed fixed on Maria's shaking hands. "Did you see what happened after?" Maria nodded slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks. "She ran. But she wasn't alone. Someone else was there, in the shadows by the trees. I thought it was just another church member, but the way they stood, watching, it felt wrong." Dana's pen paused mid-scratch. "Can you describe them?" Maria shook her head, guilt twisting her features. "It was too dark, but I know what I felt. Lila wasn't just being followed by the pastor. Somebody else wanted her gone." The room's silence deepened, broken only by Maria's muffled sobs. The next lead came not from police work, but from the quiet persistence of rumor. Dana followed it to the church's back offices, where Mildred Graves, the church treasurer, spent most of her days behind a fortress of ledgers. Her gray hair was pinned in a tight bun, her lips pursed as though perpetually tasting something sour. "Mildred," Dana began carefully, "I need to ask about the night Lila Ruiz disappeared." Mildred didn't look up from her papers. "Sad business, but the Lord calls us all in His time." Dana stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Maria Sanchez says someone was watching. Someone in the shadows. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" Mildred's pen stilled. For a moment, the only sound was the tick of the wall clock. Then she exhaled sharply. "I saw them, the pastor and that girl. I knew something wasn't right, so I kept records of my own." She pulled open a drawer and withdrew an envelope. Inside were photographs, grainy but damning. Eli and Lila kissing in the church parking lot, his hand resting against her cheek. You took these? Dana asked. Mildred's chin lifted, pride flickering in her eyes. I had to protect the church. A scandal like this could ruin everything. So yes, I watched. I kept evidence. For leverage. Before Dana could reply, her phone buzzed. An emergency text from Claire. Mom, someone put a picture in my locker. It's Lila and the pastor. Everyone's laughing. Please come. Dana's chest tightened. The rot in Pine Hollow wasn't contained to whispers anymore. It was spreading into her daughter's life. She turned back to Mildred, who was already trembling. You blackmailed him, Dana said. Mildred's lips quivered. I did. But Frank Ruiz wasn't the only monster in her life. The interview. Room was colder than usual, the hum of the air vent filling the silence. Mildred Graves sat across from Dana, her prim composure unraveling at the edges. Her hands, usually so steady when balancing church accounts, trembled as they rested on the table. Dana placed the photographs between them. You spied on Eli. You blackmailed him. But that's not all, is it? Mildred's lips pressed into a thin line. For a moment she looked like stone. Then the words spilled out, sharp and ragged. She was going to destroy everything, she whispered. Lila found out about the books, the missing money. I only ever took what I needed. Repairs, expenses the board wouldn't approve. But she said she'd expose me. Dana leaned forward, her voice low. So you followed her? Mildred's eyes glistened. She called me out by the creek that night. Said she'd show the pastor the records, tell him I was stealing. I begged her not to. She was too young to understand what it would do to us all. Her voice cracked. She turned to leave. I grabbed her arm. She slipped. The bank was muddy. She fell. The water took her. I didn't mean to. Her shoulders shook now, hands pressed against her face. But once she was gone, I told myself it was God's will, that her silence was mercy. Dana's gaze hardened. It wasn't mercy. It was murder. The door opened, and deputies stepped in. As they cuffed Mildred, her composure shattered fully. She thrashed, shrieking, eyes burning holes into Eli Cartwright, who stood just outside the glass partition. This is your punishment, she screamed, spittle flying. Her blood is on both our hands. Eli's face went white, lips parting, soundlessly as if the words had struck him like a bullet. The sun rose slowly over Pine Hollow, washing the town in soft amber light that made the church steeple glow like polished bone. Inside the sheriff's office, the air was heavy with paperwork and stale coffee. The case was over in name, but not in spirit. Mildred Graves sat in a holding cell, her hair disheveled, her glasses crooked, muttering scripture under her breath like broken fragments of a shield. Her confession was airtight. The confrontation by the creek, the shove, the fall. The water had done the rest. Yet for Dana, closure came hollow. She watched from her office window as reporters swarmed the courthouse steps, eager for the fall of a small-town treasurer. But the headlines told only part of the truth. What lay beneath was darker, more tangled. Pastor Eli Cartwright had resigned from his pulpit the night of Mildred's arrest. His farewell sermon wasn't fire or thunder, but ash and smoke. He admitted to the affair with Lila, his moral failing, as he called it, standing before a congregation that sat stone-faced and divided. Some wept openly, clutching their Bibles. Others turned away in disgust. I am guilty of sin, Eli said, his voice breaking under the weight of the moment. But I did not take Lila's life. Still, my silence, my cowardice, may have cost her the chance to live. For that, I ask your forgiveness. No one applauded when he stepped down. At home that evening, Dana sat at the kitchen table with Claire. The girl's eyes were rimmed red but steadier than before. They shared takeout cartons, the silence between them gentler now, less raw. I don't want to move, Claire whispered. Even if people hate us. Dana reached across the table, squeezing her daughter's hand. We're not running. This is our home too. Let them choke on their gossip. Later, alone in her office, Dana sifted through the last of the evidence. In one file, sealed for now, sat a letter discovered in Eli Cartwright's desk drawer, addressed to no one in particular. I knew about Mildred. I knew about the money, the lies. I told myself it wasn't my fight, that silence was safer. And when Lila came to me, desperate, ready to tell the truth, I begged her to wait. My pride outweighed her safety. My cowardice drowned her long before the creek ever did. Dana read the words twice, each line sinking heavier than the last. Eli hadn't pushed Lila, hadn't laid a violent hand on her, but his silence, his fear of scandal, had bound her fate, just as surely as Mildred's desperate shove. The file closed with a soft thud. Justice had been served, but truth was messier. The next morning, Dana drove to the creek. The water moved slow, reflecting the pale dawn sky. She stood at the bank, boots sinking slightly into the mud, and breathed in the damp air. For a long moment she said nothing, only listened to the current's quiet murmur. No truth stays. Buried forever, she whispered finally. The water shimmered, catching the sun. Somewhere beneath the ripples, secrets lingered. But for now, Pine Hollow had its answer, and Dana Holloway, weary but unbroken, had hers.